Hello and welcome to my studio. My name is Sandrine Mougy. I'm a French botanical artist living in the UK. And today, together, we are going to paint this little beauty. So I'm going to show you how to mix the right colors, how to paint the shadows, and how to layer washes, wet and wet washes of different colors to get that really intense, deep, dark purple of the Clematis. Are you ready? Let's go. I have prepared my drawing on cartridge paper and I've done a quick tone study for reference for later. And then I traced it and transferred it to watercolor paper. For the colors, I'm using Daniel Smith watercolors and I'm using a mix of French ultramarine and quinacridone lilac for the purple mix in different proportions depending on where it's going to go on the petal. And then I also have Hansa Yellow Light, which will make the green when mixed with the French ultramarine. And my Harmonic Shadows mix, which is a mix of 3 primary colors I'm already using in a painting, is going to be French ultramarine, quinacridone lilac, and Hansa Yellow Light. And we are going to start by painting the shadows. This is the painting of the Clematis. On these 2 petals, I've done the shadow wash, 1 wash of quinacridone lilac and 1 wash of purple. On these 2 petals, I've done more purple on top of that. So I am going to show you 1 petal from start to finish. So we're going to start with the shadow wash, which is going to be wet and wet. And I'm going quite dark straight away because I need those shadows to show through the purple, and the purple is quite dark as you can see on those petals. So I'm going along the veins as well. The edges of the Clematis petals are quite wavy, which is why I'm doing different patches there. My shadows have now dried, so I am going to erase as much as I can with a gentle putty rubber. My next wash is going to be pure quinacridone lilac, and it's going to be wet and wet again. And the quinacridone lilac is at the base of the petals, and that magenta color also goes all the way along the central veins. So I'm going a bit stronger at the bottom of the petal here because this is in the shadows, when here I'm going to have more highlights. So I've got to be a bit less heavy-handed. Okay, we're back for more wet and wet. Again, wetting the whole petal, including the highlights. And this time I'm using a color called Imperial Purple. And it's a color I am testing because it's a mix of French ultramarine and magenta. So it's similar to the mix we've used before. You can use your French ultramarine with quinacridone lilac again. And here I'm going to start to cover the highlights to make my subject more velvety. Bring that purple down to the tip. Push it back here between the veins. And that's it for that wash. So at this stage, we've got all the wet and wet washes done. And we're going to go in with a dry brush to do the veins on the petals. So I am going to concentrate on 1 petal to show you in detail. And I'm going to go with this one. So I have 2 mixes. One is the mix of French ultramarine and quinacridone lilac with a bit more French ultramarine in it. Or if you have it, Imperial Purple. And the other one is the same mix but with more quinacridone lilac and less French ultramarine, so it's a little bit more magenta. And I have a brush number 3 zeros and a brush number 1. With 3 zeros, I'm going to do the veins. With a number 1, I will blend them in. So I'm going to start with the central vein, well, one of the central veins because there's quite a few. And what I'm doing here is strengthen that vein with the dry brush. And if ever it becomes a bit too sharp, I just use a wet brush to blend the edges in so that it melts into the petal. And at the same time, if I go over to the side, it also adds more color to the petal as well as drawing the veins. It's like drawing with a brush, really. I'm accelerating the footage so that I can show you more without the video being 3 hours long and having huge silences in it, because it will take a while to do this. When I work towards the middle of the petal, I use more of the mix that has more of the magenta in it, and when I work more on the edge, I use the mix with more blue in it to respect the sort of color scheme that I've done so far, with the center being more magenta and the edges being blue up. The veins are all done on all the petals, so now are you ready to tackle the center? So now I'm going in with the shadow color, and I'm just going along the lines that separate the stamens because I want them to be in the shadows on one side. So go with your light direction. So I'm also putting shadows in between the stamen, and after that I am going to erase the pencil. Now the next job after I've done the shadows is to clean up any stamen that have been covered with little smidges of purple. Because I haven't used any masking fluid, it's inevitable that with the wet and wet washes I've encroached into the stamen area and onto individual stamen as well. So I'm using a flat brush to lift some of that, tidy up, and the purple that is bleeding into that I can use as shadow as well and reflection of the petals on the stamen, so I'm not too worried about that, especially as I'm planning to use white on top anyway. Alright, I've tidied up pretty much as I'm gonna be able to, so now I'm going in with my white stick, using the white pigment stick. If you don't have one, just use your normal white watercolor. I'm using titanium white because it's the most opaque of all the whites, so if you're going to use white to cover, you might as well go with the strongest one. And I'm going to continue like this until I've recovered all my stamen and they're all tidy. And then I will come back to you for the next stage, which is going to be add some green to them because the stamen are not actually white. All the white work is done, so I am now going to just run a putty rubber gently over the center. And I have a mix of French ultramarine and Hansa yellow light, which are the blue and the yellow I've used in my shadow color. And I'm just going to go over the stamen one by one. And it might be that I need to add a little bit of shadow on some of them, because when I erase the pencil, I might have lost some of the shadows that I thought I had painted, and turns out it was just a pencil mark. That happens. And with the green, you might lift a little of the white, because the white doesn't really sink into the paper. It sits on top. But that's okay, you just make the green a bit lighter. And then you can add more green if you need to once the first layer is dry. Now the bits in the center here, the pistil, is actually more yellow, so I'm gonna do a little patch of green here with more yellow in it. Still a tiny bit of blue in it, but not very much at all, because that's a completely different color. And I'm just doing a flat wash because the shadows are there for the definition, and then I'm gonna go back with more shadow to go in between these. Now the pencil's gone, I can see better what needs to be done. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna keep on adding green to the stamen. And I think that's probably enough, so this is finished. Here is the purple clematis. If you like my tutorials, then you should check out my Patreon site. The tutorials on there are longer tutorials. For example, this particular clematis tutorial is in 4 parts on Patreon. I show everything in more details with more explanation. And the subscription starts at £3 a month. So for the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, you get all these paint-along tutorials and also downloadable PDF tutorials that you can print and collect in a folder to build your collection. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, it really helps my channel, and I will see you soon in Atelier Sandrine Mogy. Happy painting, bye!